Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
8 नवंबर 2016 की रात्रि को 12 बजे से
चीफ मिनिस्टर के लिए मेरा एक ही संदेश है कि वो राज धर्म का पालन करें।
हार्डवेयर वालों की सोच क्या होती है, हार्ड वर्क वालों की सोच क्या होती है।
अरे ये ना पंजाब की खुशबू।
Multilingual.
Yeah. We are always multilingual. Okay. So let's get going. Today we have eminent journalist and lecturer at Yale, consulting editor at the Caravan, Sushant Singh, with us. Most of you will know him, but if you've been living under a rock, I will point you to some of his latest work, which includes breaking the General Naravne memoir story in the Caravan, the Mustafizur Rahman incident, titled Mustafizur, after which we had interviewed him on our PCCI pod. So, welcome to the pod, Sushant.
Thank you, Richa. Lovely to be with you and with Aditya.
Okay, so I'm going to start with my first question, which is, so I saw a tweet from our old, from a previous diplomat, Nirupama Menon Rao, sorry, which is, the world is being reordered by those who act and those who define. If India wishes to be counted among the latter, it must ensure that its silence does not speak louder than its convictions. What are your comments on that? What does it mean for India to be a leader in the world?
Yeah, so I think there's no way you can disagree with what former India's former foreign secretary is saying. And clearly, see, diplomats are very diplomatic, and even even retired diplomats are rather diplomatic. And for her to come out and say it as clearly as she's saying should be a warning to the Indian government and to the Indian people. The Indian people should recognize that the silence which she is referring to is actually a selective silence. Because let's also not forget, and we are talking it in the context of the US-Israel attack on Iran, that we should not forget that Mr. Modi was in Israel hours before the decapitation strike on Iran began. And at that point in time, he was standing fully behind Bibi and fully behind Israel, both anything that it would do in the future. Even thereafter, India did not condole the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei. It did not, neither the foreign minister nor the prime minister did it. It has refused to condemn US and Israel for what they have done, including bombing a girls' school in Tehran, or the torpedoing of an Iranian ship which was participating in an Indian exercise near the Indian shore. So India's silence has been rather selective, and it is this select. So one is, you are silent because you are too weak and too timid and too shy and you don't want to take sides. Another is you are selectively silent. When you are selectively silent, you are essentially taking sides, but taking sides in a manner where you want to act in a manner where you think you are too clever by half. When I was serving with the UN, there was a Ghanaian officer in my team. And this is many years back, 2 decades back. And he once told me a famous term. He says, I used to be a major at that time. He's a major saying there are a lot of people in the world. And there are some people who are like Maradona. They will do dribbling and go like this. So India is trying to be like doing what Maradona did in 1986 vis-a-vis England, trying to dribble past too many goals and thinking that we will score the goal. But that doesn't happen. That happens once in the lifetime, or once in a generation, or once in multiple generations. And I think India is trying to be Mr. Modi's government. India is actually, unfortunate we call it India because it's not India. It's Mr. Modi's government, and primarily the Prime Minister himself and a couple of other guys like Doval and Jaishankar, who are trying to think that they're Maradona when they are not. India is pretty bad at football, perhaps in the last 20 or 30 in the world in the world rankings, one ranking. So that's how I see it.
So how much of this is like from this government in particular, like not India in general, but this government in particular? How much of this is because of the fact that they mostly cater, like everything they do is with a domestic audience in mind, right? To pander to their own vote base. How much of this is because they are captive to that? Like uh, this pro-Israel, like pro-BB kind of this thing, image that they're trying to project, is how much of it is to pander to the Islamophobic vote base that they have, because everything eventually for these people just boils down to that, right?
So I think when you say it is pandering to an Islamophobic base, it essentially are we trying to say that the party which is ruling India today, or Mr. Modi or they himself, they are not ideologically Islamophobic, or they are not ideologically aligned to Israel or to the Zionist project? I would say that they are as much aligned as their base to this ideological project. So rather than pandering, they are actually fully in tune with their base. They're fully in tune with their base. And in fact, my own understanding of Mr. Modi's core supporters, whatever that number may be, and I don't think it is, it may be barely in double digits overall India, and that's also on the higher side. Not the vote. The vote is for various reasons: caste, party, organization, RSS, who your opponents are, what kind of media narrative is, what the election commission is doing, what the SIR is doing. But if you were to think that what would be the core support base, would be barely in double digits in terms of percentage terms. That core base is more like a cult, like the cult you have for Asaram Bapu or Ram Rahim or those kind of figures, which is completely an irrational cult. And I'll try and explain to you in this manner. You remember the moves that Mr. Modi was making towards Pakistan. Even ISI was invited to Pathankot, and the same cult, the same support base was not saying a word. So they just follow whatever is told to them. They support him. So my sense is that this support for Israel is not dictated by the desire to pander or to any kind of support base. It is aligned with their ideology. It is aligned with their worldview, and there is a fascination, as Christoph Jaffelow says, to the Hindutva ideology of the 21st century. Has more in common with Zionism than with the Nazi fascism of the 20th century.
Yeah. Why does this government consider non-alignment like a weakness? And I think, Aditya, you mentioned that now they use a new term, which is multi-alignment. Like, why do they consider this a weakness when it has been a successful path in the past, right? So Modi seems to be a guy who can work within a framework, right, where he curries favors and he grants favors, right? That's essentially his modus operandi. But international diplomacy completely evades these folks. Like um, they seem to not be able to handle that at the same level at which they handle domestic affairs. And I'm not sure, like, and this is considering the international community actually gave him a lot of leeway early on. They were extremely hopeful. Like, I remember reading like old think tank articles from 2014, 2015, international think tanks that were saying, yes, we are really excited to work with this government. You know, how did what triggered that decline, and how have they squandered a lot of that goodwill?
So I'll say two things. One is to answer your first part of the question about non-alignment. I think that's essentially the antipathy towards Nehru and the idea that we have to somehow diminish Nehru. So, Richa, as you know, the fact is that even more than Gandhi, what really riles them is Nehru. Nehru riles them more than that because they can take parts of Gandhi, Gandhi of the 1920s and 1930s, and convert him into this soft Hindu figure with cow protection, etc. And just because now I'm saying that, so I must clarify. So Gandhi said "Gau seva," not cow protection. He was saying in service of the cow. Gandhi has a very exact quote on this, that for me it is the service of the cow, not the protection of the cow. But of course they don't want to. So, but you can pick and choose from Gandhi and still use him in some way by misrepresenting him, by distorting him. It is with Nehru that they have maximum problems because of his scientific temper, because of his very modern liberal outlook, because of hardcore secular values, progressive values, the kind of India that he wanted to create, and his very strong, clear, determined worldview about what Hindutva ideology means and why it is more dangerous than any other kind of nationalist ideology. His letters to the chief minister of the state, etc. So when they talk about non-alignment and want to diminish it as an idea, or to diminish or to show it as a sign of weakness or a sign of failure, it's essentially a negation of Nehru and everything that Nehru stood for. It is the way they try and negate the idea of modern India, of a scientific India, of a secular India, progressive India. It's a continuation of the same path that they do. And if anybody is talking about the glory of India, there's no better book than Discovery of India. Discovery of India actually essentially says that forget all this narrative. India was one, and as somebody said, it's a bad history book, but a great book of nation building. And Discovery of India actually tells you what India is about, and it's an imagination. And Nehru knows that independence is coming, so he wants to give a big idea as to how do I justify this country which has been which has never been united since the time of Aurangzeb or even before that, and not as a single political entity. How do I say that this is a country and this is not just lines on the map or whatever Churchill said? It's like a geographical time, like the equator. And so it's a great book, but they want to negate everything that Nehru does, and therefore, this idea of non-alignment not being able to work, or is not, or having failed, and finding new terms like, as you said, multi-alignment or multipolarity or whatever the word they may be using, but they are all euphemisms for the same thing. Now, as far as Mr. Modi wasting the opportunity that was presented to him in 2014, which he could take advantage of, that's obvious by now. You have that very famous Warren Buffett quote, that when the tide runs out, you come to know who has been swimming naked. So it's the 12 years the tide has now run out. Essentially, it started running out with Operation Sindoor, or the military targeting of Pakistan, the 88-hour military conflict with Pakistan in last May. And that thing has now reached that stage with this war on Iran by Israel and United States. It's pretty clear that the tide has run out. And now you can see in every single domain, whether it is in the field of economy, whether it is in the field of foreign policy, whether it is in the field of social harmony, politics, internal security, things have just, that these 12 years were completely wasted in only getting selfies and in doing public relations and trying to build everything into some kind of a Vishwaguru nonsense and personality projection. The opportunity was definitely there, particularly in the field of foreign policy. 2014 global capital was looking where it should go. India was at the right place. India was at the right place vis-a-vis China. China had been identified by Obama administration due to its pivot to Asia as the next big challenger. India was a country of comparable size, had the kind of heft everybody wanted to court India. India was a democratic country. China was as a communist authoritarian country. So India had everything, big size of population, a good future, a liberal democracy, the right geographical location. But clearly, these 12 years, when they could have been taken advantage of, when India could have been built into some kind of a more formidable middle part to be prepared for any eventuality that comes. You as I say, you thatch your roof during the summers so that you're prepared for the rainy
Yeah.
season. You don't get up in the rainy season and say, "Oh, my roof is not thatched, and what do I do now?" Now you can't do anything, man. You wasted those 12 years. Now you can't do anything. So those 12 years of the time when India should have taken advantage of, those 12 years under Mr. Modi have been, unfortunately, the wasted years. And what I'm saying is they've been wasted here not only in terms of that he did not do anything else. These were the time when India could have done what China did between 2000 and 2013, 2014. This was the time when India could have really taken off. India, this is like putting the car in neutral gear and you are running. India could have really could have gotten into an overdrive and gone to the next level. That opportunity was missed. It is not what India did. It is about what India did not do under Mr. Modi in these last 12 years. And that is what really pinches me. And some people like you, me, Aditya, all your friends at the pod, they've all been warning about it. A lot of people like us have been warning about it, that this is what's happening. But people say, "Oh, we are negative people. We are saying this because we don't like him." Of course, I don't like him because he's not good for India. I can't like a person who's not good for India or for Indians, the larger community of Indians. So, but that doesn't mean that what we were saying was wrong, as has now been shown. People like me and others who have been warning, people like you who have been warning about it, were absolutely right about what was not done correct in this period, and now we are paying the price for it. So you'll find a lot of people trying to tell us, "Oh, what can he do now?" Man, he can't do anything now. You did not thatch the roof during the summer. At that time, to use a metaphor, you were smoking a joint and you were lying on, and you were enjoying the sun. So, if it rains now, of course your house is going to be flooded. So the time to thatch the roof was much earlier. The time to repair the roof was much earlier. You did not do it then. Now you can't get up and turn around and say, "Oh, what do I do now?" Now you can't do anything. You will be flooded, and India, the population, the 1.44 billion people of this country, will suffer. And it is essentially, you take out 150 million of the top sliver, the consumption economy, which drives the consumption economy. The rest of 1.2 billion, 1.25 billion are the ones who will bear the brunt of what has gone wrong in the past 12 years.
Yeah, I think Vivek Kaul has talked about this a few times. Like he said, a lot of the growth that happened, say, in the automotive sector was due to people buying second cars, not due to new people ending up buying new cars. And I think I read one of these studies, and this was reported by, I think, a department in the Indian government itself, is that within 2005 and 6 to 2015, 2016, we pulled a lot of people out of poverty, right? And I think the fact that we have no data about the 10 years since is probably like an indictment on the fact that we have done significantly worse. Like, and a lot of these things, like COVID aside, a lot of these things were they were man-made. They were initially inflicted upon us by ourselves, by our own government, and that has set us back a lot.
Absolutely, Richa. See, the fact is inequality has risen. And you experience inflation in a certain way. You experience economic growth in a certain way. You experience hope in a certain way. Why are people running away? Why people want to use the donkey route to go out? Because they don't see a future. You have essentially killed the future. The study that you're talking about, there are two very famous studies which talk about a consumption class of only 150 million. That India's consumption class, which can actually afford to buy stuff, is around 150 million. Unlike, let's say, China, or it's not. India's consumption class is very, very small. So you have 150 million consumption class, and I think another 150 or 200 million who's barely aspirational, whom people like us think are poor, people who are work as housemates, drivers, etc. in our homes in India, whom we think are poor. No, they are not. They are just below the top 150 million. And then you have the bulk of India. Unfortunate part is because India is such a big country, and India is a country because of caste system and hierarchy and class. We are all isolated and live in our bubbles. We don't even
Yeah.
realize how poor India is. At the end of the day, Richard, India is a country with a per capita income of $2,600, $2,700. With China is $12,000, $13,000 now. And the US, from where you and I are speaking, it is $88,000, or I think
Yeah.
$90,000 now. So India, at the end of the day, India is a very poor country. And it's a poor country while simultaneously being a highly unequal country. As my very dear friend Hartosh Bal always reminds, India's thin sliver of upper caste population is lesser than the white population in apartheid South Africa. Apartheid South Africa had 18% white population. India's upper caste population, if you go by the Bihar census, is somewhere in the range of 14 to 15%. And the kind of wealth, power, the kind of incomes that it controls is at par with what the apartheid South Africa was controlling. And because of our social hierarchy and social structures, we have isolated people, so people don't connect with each other. And now, and I'm sure you will come to this, media has completely collapsed. So people think that this is my own singular misfortune. It is not the misfortune of everyone else. I perhaps have done something wrong. If I had done something right, I would not be suffering. Others are not suffering, and I should do something to uplift myself. So you don't allow that feeling of empathy, or a feeling of people coming together, of community building, where a large section of people believe that this is structural and this has nothing to do with my fate or my previous life, or my rebirth, or whatever. And that is where the media has been very dangerous in trying to isolate everyone's suffering as their own individual suffering, and not coming out of political decision making because of structural factors which need to be changed.
Aditya, did you have any questions?
So isn't this like, say, a crisis unlike many others, even like unlike COVID in some sense, that if this hits right into like people's kitchens, like with an LPG crisis or something, is the line, say, straight from a diplomatic failure to the failure to have uh, crude oil reserves, from there right to the crisis of LPG cylinders being available? Is this an easier line to draw for the like the large masses, even in the absence of, say, a hard-hitting media or a fair media? Do you think there is more that the opposition can do with this than in, say, COVID, where, like, say, a lack of oxygen cylinders, people with privilege were, say, in some sense insulated? So, is the insulation a lot less now compared to the past?
I don't know the many parts to your question, Aditya. You've weaved in three or four or five questions in one. I'll try and tackle as many as I can, as I can remember. One is, you said that that is there a direct line from the diplomatic failures or diplomatic mismanagement. So I won't say it's only purely diplomatic mismanagement from where you can draw a dotted line or a direct line. What I would say is that from these diplomatic and economic and governance failures. So you can't take away Manipur, you can't take away what is happening to Indian Muslims, you can't take away what is happening to Christians, how they're not being allowed to pray, you can't take away what's happening in Kashmir, you can't take away what you've been doing with Sikhs, you can't can't take all that away. So all those factors, what you've done in the society, you've tried to, the way you've tried to impose Hindi over South India, etc., etc. So it is this whole combination of that, the kind of economic policies that you have pursued, where your cronies have benefited, where larger people have not benefited, where education has not been prioritized, where things which should have been prioritized have not been prioritized, manufacturing has not taken off at all. You have become more dependent on China. You are essentially importing stuff. And I was just seeing data that somebody said, oh, India is going to produce more induction cookers, and somebody put out every single part of that induction cooker is being imported. Every single part. From the switch, because that's the switch that produces the magnetic field by switching it on and off. It comes from the country from where you are speaking, Aditya, from Germany. And from, and other parts come from elsewhere. So you're not producing anything. It's like the iPhone. You're assembling by subsidizing assembly and then saying, oh, we are exporting so many iPhones. So you didn't follow the right economic policies. You didn't follow the right diplomatic policies. You didn't follow the right domestic political policies. You divided and weakened the country. You did not promote growth in the right manner, and on top of that, as Arvind Subramanian's new paper with Josh Phelan and others clearly shows, that the data about GDP was not correct. The GDP growth rate which has been told to us is not what actually it was, and even the GDP growth rates were much lower. To come to the second question, is it different from what COVID was? Yes, definitely. It is different from what COVID was. COVID was something where the whole world was affected, and you could say clearly that this is not man-made in a certain sense, and we really can't do much. But do also remember that this government, Mr. Modi and his minions, his ministers, they have all claimed that India was at the forefront of tackling COVID, and no other country tackled the way we tackled COVID. We all know the truth. The data for the registration of deaths was not released for those couple of years, till very recently, and buried under, because you didn't want to show. Every single data shows that India did very, very poorly on COVID. People like me personally experienced it. My mother had COVID. I do not know of anyone who doesn't know of a family member or a friend having lost a life in COVID. I do not know of anyone, and I'm saying this without exception, who doesn't know a friend or a family member. My own cousins died. So many cousins on both sides, from my mother's side, from my father's side, they died in COVID. So there was enough havoc that was caused. But because the media tried to completely cover it, and it's almost like what George Orwell wrote in 1984. What was that thing? That I don't remember the exact quote, but it was that they wanted you not to trust their own eyes and ears, but only wanted to believe what they were being told. It's almost like that. So now you have the narrative where you can see media reports. I saw one in the Hindu today. I saw a couple of others in Express and elsewhere, where people are being told that there is no cylinder crisis. So then why are people queuing up for 3 days, 4 days? Why are people dying if there is no crisis? But they want you to believe that there is no crisis. And this is where the role of big media and the role of social media becomes critical. Now, I will agree with you on this, that the tide has turned somewhat, because what is the indicator of the turning of the tide? To my mind, the big indicator of turning of the tide is the way they have gone after certain social media handles and certain social media posts. So this establishment, this government has total and complete control over the narrative from big media, television channels, newspapers, OTTs, cricket stars, Bollywood stars, Dhurandhars. Everything is totally in their control. It is in the interstices of the social media network where people like you, me, and others, and lot of others, some of them far more aggressive and far sharper than others. I think India's perhaps best satirist is ROFL Gandhi. Nobody comes close to him. He's like, nobody gets politics like him. Or there are others, Zubair, what he's doing, and there are so many others. You see a large number of them. It is or people producing videos, people producing memes and things completely, and those getting out of hand. And the nature and the manner in which this government has gone after those posts, that material, clearly tells you that they know that something is turning, and something is turning which they cannot control by just controlling the narrative on the page one of Indian Express or Z News or Times Now. And I think that is an indicator that this is somewhat different from what happened in 2020 or what has happened so far. That this is a point at which they feel the need to go after as somebody said, I think RFL had that tweet about the North Korean leader made to wear glasses and with a beard. And they said this is spreading social harmony, disharmony. I think Bombay police or somebody said, and the tweet was taken down. He says, I have not even said Modi here. The guy doesn't look like Modi. But like, the moment you put on glasses and beard, of course, people can see what he's trying to do. But he says, what has government of India, North Korean dictator, got to do with social harmony or religious harmony in India? But that is the level of paranoia. That is the level at which at which they are operating. And I think that comes from the fact that they worry that something is gone about Mr. Modi. So I don't want to name, but a very senior journalist. I teach a class on journalism as well here in this semester, seminar class, and he came. A very we all know him, highly respected, very very famous journalist, not in mainstream anymore. And he said something very interesting to my seminar class, and he said that in 2014, Mr. Modi could win a free election. In 2019, also perhaps he could win a free election. In 2024, and now he needs to do SIR, he needs to do the election commission being controlled, the Supreme Court being controlled, the media being totally under thumb. And now it is that stage where even social media needs to be controlled. And anything which mocks him, which makes fun of him, needs to be completely wiped, clean, obliterated, which tells you that his popularity or his ability to win a free and fair poll at this point in time, or the kind of funding that he's getting, or the kind of the use of ED, the use of ECI, clearly tells us that things are not going great for him. And I think that's where the significant difference from the past is, particularly with respect to 2020 COVID crisis. So a long answer, I'm only answering a couple of your questions, because I've now forgotten what all because you packed in 7 or 8 questions in that one statement, man.
That's typical. You may find us having very long-winded questions. Just because these topics are so wide-ranging and so complicated. Like, actually, the point that you brought up about social media is very interesting. So there are two things that I want to highlight. One is that there is a meme of a guy who's imitating Modi talking to world leaders. So he's hugging them and he's speaking gibberish, and he's laughing. That has been taken down, and that was the first indicator that I thought like something has really gone wrong, because they generally allow these kinds of things unless they really become very viral. And what happened is, because of the Streisand effect, it has literally become more viral than it ever was. And it's literally the most shared meme, and it's taken on like a new lease of life after it got banned. And this brings me back to like in the around 1976, Gerald Ford was imitated by Chevy Chase in SNL, and he showed him as like this bumbling, stumbling leader, and that perception actually carried into people's perception of him. And I wonder, like, even in China, like Winnie the Pooh memes are banned, right? So they don't allow you to mock Xi Jinping through Winnie the Pooh memes. Uh, but I wonder, like, are this time may be a time where they're particularly sensitive to especially his Vishwaguru image because of this meme. And then the second thing that I saw is that the second installment of Dhurandhar has been openly dismissed as propaganda. Like, this was not the case with the first movie. And the same
The
people
fence
who went
sitters,
and
at
watched
least.
yes, yeah, and even everyone on social media, like they're all kind of saying, even if they go and watch it, they're like, yes, this is propaganda. And it's just, I don't know whether it's the timing, because it happened at this time with this unfortunate war. And it's people generally face a cognitive dissonance where on one hand you have this movie that's telling them everything is good and what we did in the past is great, and everyone, perhaps we have forgotten demonetization, but it's been recent enough that you can recall it. I wonder, like, what, are we seeing their PR push finally backfire? Like, because on one hand they're banning memes, and on the other hand, even their propaganda, however good it is being called out as open propaganda, even by people who were cheering them on before.
Oh yes, I would like to agree with you, and I would hope that is true. But we never know. It
Yeah.
always. Uh, I think something has shifted, but is the shift enough in the sense that is to make a massive difference to the lives of 1.4 billion Indians, and particularly to the lives of religious minorities and Dalits and tribals who have suffered extensively in the last 12 years? Is if that is the question, I don't know. But yes, a shift has happened. But is the shift a pivot, complete pivot, and a complete change? I hope it is, but I can never be sure. Just to come to your question about the meme, the guy who made the meme was on Kunal Kamra's show. I don't know if you see, Kunal Kamra does a show with ROFL, and he has
Yes.
those,
Yeah.
he has a couple of tunes, comics, etc. coming, and this guy has been there a couple of times, and the last one was pretty good. My good friend Apar Gupta of the Internet Freedom Foundation was also there. I really loved that episode. Kunal, if you're watching this or hearing this, yeah, that was a that was a great episode. ROFL was very good. Apar was very good, and all of these guys were very good. That meme, yeah, of course, has, because I think Dhruv Rathi put it out on social media, and then it just took off, and then everybody has put that out, and it has, as you rightly said, it has become much bigger than what it eventually was, reminding people of how Modi behaves in the company of foreign leaders. In fact, I remember Modi met some foreign leader last week or so, or whatever, last few days, and a lot of comments around social media were, "Why are you not putting the audio of this video? Why are you only showing a clip without the audio?" Which is clearly coming from what had been done by the meme. So that effect of meme is there. The Vishnu image has clearly taken a hit, and I think let's face it, the fact that Pakistan has been able to take such an important diplomatic role, whereas India has been marginalized, clearly shows that. So Mr. Modi's last 12 years have been that Pakistan doesn't count, it doesn't matter. We have isolated Pakistan. Pakistan has failed. But Pakistan is talking to Saudi Arabia. Pakistan is talking to Iran. Pakistan is talking to United States. Pakistan is talking to China. No other country can do it at the same time. So this is what your 12 years of diplomacy has achieved. That Pakistan can talk to everyone, and you are left calling Pakistan a dalal. That's all you're left. Behaving like a nasty, bullying teenage in a school kid. You may be a 72-year-old foreign minister of India, but you are behaving like a schoolboy, calling names to another country. So clearly, that Vishwaguru image has gone down, has suffered. There's little Vishwaguruship that that Mr. Modi can right now boast of. I think a lot of it came off after Sindhu, after May 2025, which people did not realize at that point in time, because the hype was so much and the narrative was so much. But I thought even then cracks were clearly visible in that narrative, because people were saying, why did Trump announce the ceasefire? Or why did so and so happen? If this is the case, then what happened at that point in time? Why did India not being able to get condemnation from anyone or support from any of the foreign powers? Or why these MPs had to be sent, and who achieved nothing? So cracks were already there, and those cracks were pretty wide even last year. I think the attack on Pakistan was the turning point. And those cracks have now become big, wide valleys, big, wide gaps in which Mr. Modi's PR effort has fallen deep inside. So Vishwaguru image is gone. The meme etc. Have helped. Dhurandhar 2 propaganda, of course. I think everybody now recognizes that while Dhurandhar 1, or whatever you want to call it, was more shown as anti-Pakistan. And I do meet a few Pakistani students or colleagues from Pakistan, etc., and they joke about the film. Those of them who have seen it, and like they mock it. Is this Leari or whatever? And the facts of the film apart. The the part two. So the funny thing is, I've not seen any of these two parts, and I don't intend seeing them. Uh, the funny thing is, I was talking to a South Asia bureau chief of a very prominent Western newspaper. I don't want to name the person because it was a private call. So, but he did mention he came out after seeing Dhurandhar 2, and he said to me, and what surprised me, he said, if the movie was released anywhere in Europe, it would have been banned for religious hate. He says the religious hate against Muslims and Islam in Dhurandhar 2 is so evident, so direct, and so vicious that anywhere in Europe it would have been banned for spreading religious hatred. That is the kind of thing that people think. I think Economist ran a piece, Banyan, the columnist, in the latest issue, where they mocked Dhurandhar. They say you can't do a successful operation in Canada of all countries, and they say of all countries, Canada. And now you're talking about doing this via Dhurandhar too. So it has no relation to any reality. But this is the dream or the idea that they have sold to a section of Indians who somehow want to believe that India has become this great country, and these are all geniuses who are doing stuff. And so you have to fabricate stuff. You have to do all these kind of things. But yes, Even their ardent supporters know that Durandar 2 is propaganda. It has nothing to do with reality. And I think that's clearly, as you said, there are a few indicators of that shift. And Durandar 2 is part of is part of that shift. Will the PR push go down? I don't think it will go down, and I'll say the reason for this. Just try and recollect that BBC documentary which was banned on
Mm-hmm.
Gujarat violence, 2002 Gujarat violence against Muslims. That documentary has that very telling interview towards the end, where the BBC journalist, that woman journalist, asks Modi, at the time Chief Minister of Gujarat, what is there anything you did wrong? What if there's anything you did wrong during the period? And he very nastily answers, the only thing I did wrong was not to control the media. And I think that idea is deeply embedded, that you can fix everything by completely controlling the narrative, controlling the media, dominating the media. And that is something which you should remember with conservative politics, particularly reactionary kind of politics. The idea will always be that we did not do it enough. We did not go hard enough. And they will always double down on things that they are doing. So the PR push, the idea of controlling the narrative, the idea of controlling the media, the desire to censor, the desire to censor even more would be greater, because the narrative, the belief would be that we are not doing enough. That is why this is happening. If we do it more, then things will be fixed. That is the nature of conservative politics, neoconservative politics, of reactionary politics in a certain sense. And what we have with Mr. Modi and the BJP is, if you were to put it politely, Hindu conservative politics, but if you were to put it more forthrightly, a kind of a reactionary politics. And that's why my thing is that they will double down. You will see a lot of this happening, even more. They would want people to self-censor. They would want people to be afraid. They would want people not to push stuff out. And if something is pushed out, they would want it to get out. In an ideal world, Mr. Modi, because you gave the example of China, Mr. Modi would love to have a system like China, where every single social media platform, or every single app, or every single digital company operates out of China, and the Great Firewall doesn't allow any of the Western companies to come through, so that a company like X, of all things, a company like X files an affidavit in the High Court saying that those 16 handles which have been banned are completely unjustified under Indian law. If it was China with the Great Firewall, Mr. Modi would not have to, X would not do it, and Mr. Modi would not be embarrassed. We have read books, we have read how the Great Firewall works. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't need to say everything. Most of the time, the companies know what can go or what cannot go, and take it down within minutes. And because India is of a comparable size to China, unlike many smaller countries, it can, because China could make these companies profitable. So if you are on a Chinese social media platform, let's say if you're on Weibo, then 99% of the Chinese don't need to go to Facebook to talk to their friends. So they can talk to their friends because everybody's on Weibo, because because it's such a big country. Only in a country of smaller size, that's a problem. So clearly, because India is of a similar size, it could have been done in India. But then, of course, there are all these problems of how the internet economy works, because you want to be part of the Western technological system, where the hardware and the software. So in an ideal world, India would like to be, Mr. Modi's government would like to be like the Chinese, or like what Putin is now trying to do by censoring YouTube, by censoring stuff. But I doubt that they will be able to do more, because a large core of their support base is the NRI, and the diaspora Bhakt community. And those people perhaps would be extremely uncomfortable if these companies were to be targeted. Some of them work in these companies as well. So I think it's a long-winded answer to say that we will perhaps see a doubling down on this. There is a shift, there is a change. We'll see doubling down on this kind of ham-handed, harsh measures that they have initiated. Whether they will succeed or not will depend on the people of India. I have always believed that the Indian people have a great capacity to go down and then come up. Resilience is something which marks India. And I'll give you a reason. Sorry, it's an answer which I'll continue, because now that we are talking about it. And the reason for that is, I always believe that, the worst period for India in the last couple of 100 years was 45, 46, when partition was about to happen. The kind of communal violence that India saw, the kind of movement of population that India saw, the kind of death, killing, hatred, and India and I'm talking about India then, now, not about the rest of South Asia. India could recover from that within 6, 7 years. By 54, 55, India was back to being a fairly normal, healthy society where Hindus and Muslims were again living together. People were talking to each other. Things, India has great resilience. If it could come out of that kind of violence, that kind of hatred, that kind of enmity, we know hundreds of people were being killed. Thousands of Muslims were killed in Jammu. We know what happened in Hyderabad. We know what happened in Bihar. We know what happened in Calcutta. If India could come out of that, at that point in time, India can definitely come out of this. So people who say, though, this nothing will change, this will not be, I have great hope, I have great faith on the Indian people. It is for the Indian people to discover their moral core, to discover their idea of what is right and wrong, to believe that there are certain values that they need to stand for, which is what make India unique, which is what make India different. And I think that is when we will see the difference. It will not be achieved by tactical maneuvering and doing stuff to pander to somebody's emotions or to pander to something. It will be achieved by really believing in that higher goal. What Mandela could do, what Gandhi could do, what Martin Luther King could do. You have to believe in those ideas. They may sound ridiculous. You and I may be sounding ridiculous to you guys saying this, but
No.
eventually you have to believe in higher ideals. Eventually you have to believe in something bigger than you, something bigger than your family or your caste group or your kinship. You have to believe in a bigger idea. You have to believe in a bigger idea of humanity. And I think that is what Indians have always believed in from the time of Buddha. And that is something which we should again aspire to see, that India, to get that India. If India could recover from 45, 46, India can definitely recover from last 12, 13 years. India can definitely recover from that. There is no reason why India can't do it now.
Yeah, that's it's very difficult to follow that up with anything, with any questions. No, I think you fill us with hope. It's really great. I do want to bring our attention to actually some of the attempts that are coming around the pike, which is there's a few things happening. Some of this has been covered in the media by The Wire and other outlets. But one of the things that's happening is India is pushing for the direct to home TV to only be available through its own satellites. Okay. They are also creating their own set-top boxes. And there was a small clip of Ashwini Vaishnav, who is now the INB minister, because of course he has not created enough chaos and caused enough, problems in the railway ministry. But yeah, they're also creating a platform called My Waves for user-generated content for reels, TV shows, and videos. And you will be able to use a specific AI-powered content generation tool there. It's essentially like a social media and a media conglomerate that's under the government's control to power what they're calling this the orange economy. Okay. And you couple that with the new IT rules to control digital news providers. Like you said, they're definitely going down the Chinese route. Like they're trying to be a little bit more like China. I think there's also some reporting today from the Scroll, I think through Sabah Gurmat, who said that a lot of the content creators in smaller cities like tier 2 tier 3 cities, that economy is collapsing a little bit, the content creation economy. And along with unemployment, I think they're also trying to create like an employment generation through this orange economy because of the unemployment crisis that we are facing and continue to face. So we are definitely in danger here of things turning south. Yeah, with what we decide to do about it, like I don't know. It really depends on the Indian people. So
I know. I think the steps that you list out very clearly show what they're trying to do. But because you mentioned some of the independent media here, you mentioned Scroll, you mentioned The Wire. So I would also like to take this opportunity for a big shout out to what independent media has done in India in a very tough time. The Caravan, where I'm the consulting editor, particularly shout out to Hartosh Bal, to Pooja Sen, the two powerhouses which who run the Caravan. Shout out to The Wire, all three founders, to the editor, to the editor Seema Chishti. Shout out to Scroll, Naresh, Supriya. Shout out to News Minute, News Laundry. I think these are not easy times, and in these times to be able to sustain and run these platforms at a time when what is going on takes a lot of effort, energy, and I think a lot of money being spent on shrinks and
yes.
therapists to get through this. And each of the people, each of the persons who are working there, and I know so many of them, particularly younger people, it's not easy working in these places, and hats off to them for what they are doing. I think most of the times we don't recognize this, that how difficult it is for a large number of people of my generation, people of my age, my seniority. We have lived our lives to a great extent, we have had careers, but for a lot of younger people, they are starting out here and then they are trying to do this with very limited amount of resources, and it takes a lot. I do see, and I have huge respect for a lot of young journalists who work at these places, especially women journalists, young women journalists, the kind of work they do and the kind of effort they put. It must be recognized, and because you have given me this platform where I can talk about anything, Richa and Aditya, so
Absolutely.
I'm using this opportunity to plug all this. On everything else, I had not seen this document which you spoke about, the DTH TV and the set-top boxes and my waves, etc. But clearly, it seems to be part of a plan, as you said, to go down the Chinese way and to have your own ecosystem which you completely control, and you control the way you support and fund the people. So it points to two things. One is that it points to the decline of the big media, the television networks. Nobody cares for television networks anymore. I think Vanita Kohli Khandekar had a piece in Business Standard a few days back saying that 7% of India are coming out of television, out of news television, and news television is like really gone. I don't think people watch news television anymore. Even people of my parents' generation or my in-laws' generation, they would rather watch. They would rather watch YouTube than watch television. So television news is completely gone, and I think the same is the situation with newspapers. Newspapers maybe for a different reason. Some newspapers like the Hindu or Telegraph may still be standing out for what they do, but I think the younger generation, the generation of my children, people who are in their 20s, people who are maybe even in their 30s, are no longer consuming news via newspapers or news sites. They have other ways of consuming news, like in my class, when I ask people here at Yale, all my students are consuming news through TikTok. Hardly anyone. For them, like New York Times is like some archaic website. Why would anybody go to New York or see the New York Times or Washington Post or New Yorker or what have you? So for them, TikTok is the thing. And I think in India, whatever little bit I understand, for the younger generation, it is Instagram and other social media platforms from which whatever news they get, they get from there. So there might be exceptions, of course, people who might be still reading newspapers and reading newsletters. People like you and me, I'm sure we have all also moved to a large number of podcasts, Substacks, etc., globally,
Yes.
because Krugman is writing Substack, Tools is writing Substack. So if you are invested in global events, you would go and read the Substacks. For cricket, you will go and read Cricket et al., or you will read
Mhm.
the PCCI Substack. Shout out to all you guys for doing a fantastic thing on cricket, which is so different from what we see, what we see what we see everywhere. So it points to a shift in the way media is being produced, media is being distributed, and media is being consumed. And it is in this shift that the Modi government thinks that there is an opportunity for it to capture it and totally control it. Because so far they have not been able to put this ocean in a bottle. Reminds me of that famous Clinton quote in China that it is like internet is like nailing the jelly O to the wall. And as people said, the Chinese eventually showed that you can nail Jelly-O to the wall. And Clinton has later on, and I'm talking about Bill Clinton, at the time he was the president. Bill Clinton has actually agreed that he was wrong in saying that you can't control the internet. It would be like nailing a Jelly-O to the wall. They nailed the Jelly-O to a wall, and I think the Indian government is also trying to nail the Jelly-O to the wall in this case. Whether they will succeed or not will depend on a lot of factors. The fact that India comes under US pressure, you've seen this in the latest WTO round. When the US big tech goes after the Indian government completely collapses. And because the US big tech companies have so much power to lobby within the administration in Washington, D.C., they come under pressure from the US government. So the kind of sanctions or barriers that would be required to keep big tech companies out may not be possible in India. And secondly, because a large number of Indian diaspora, which is uh, which forms a significant support base for the Hindutva ideology in India, is also invested in these firms, is also works with these firms, would want India to be part of that same kind of network. Also, acts as a kind of a disincentive for the Indian government to do what it would ideally want to do. So
Yeah.
their roadmap is pretty clear. Can they do it? I don't know. We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and watch.
Hmm. Aditya, do you have any question before I move on to a particularly interesting topic?
I'm
Okay.
I have a question from slightly a while back, which is about this whole Dalal statement, right? So that is something which I genuinely feel is like this a signature of this government, where it's something which feels like almost intentionally leaked out so that their base feels really good about this whole thing. Like
Yeah.
it might be a huge diplomatic failure, but the base would now have this one line to speak about on WhatsApp forwards and like, see, हम लोग तो बोल दिया पाकिस्तान को अपना जगह दिखा दिया and all of that. So I think that basically sums up this government and its diplomacy.
Aditya,
None of it is in, yeah.
sorry, Aditya, no, you want to come? Go ahead, go ahead. I'll because I just
No,
wanted
so
to.
I just feel like none of what they do is aimed at least resolving a crisis or like it's whatever is their idea of Vishwaguru-ness. I don't even think there is one. So it all of it is just what would make for a great WhatsApp forward in the middle of a crisis, which would divert the attention away from what the actual crisis is.
So 2 points, Aditya, here. One is, of course, Jaishankar has a record of being nasty and mistaking nastiness for strength. Even when he was a diplomat, he would be nasty with journalists. He would be nasty about people. He has this way of talking down to people who are lower in the power hierarchy, he thinks. So, that usual corporate belief of, or the Indian caste system belief of, you absolutely cow down before the people who are more powerful to you, and you kick everyone who's lower in the power hierarchy. Jaishankar epitomizes that. And so a lot of it came out of that idea that nastiness is strength. So if I can be nasty to someone, I'm pretty strong. The second thing which I picked up from a lot of journalists who were briefed by people who were present in that committee was that Jaishankar was being asked questions about the United States in that all-party meeting, and he was being constantly being asked questions about the United States, because most people see Jaishankar as being, to put it politely, being very soft on the United States, or being on the side of the United States in a certain sense within the Indian system. And in response to these questions, almost in an irritable manner, that's what journalists have told me, and of course I have not spoken to people, but journalists have told me, in almost in an irritable manner, he lashed out at Pakistan as a dalal. It wasn't a pre-planned, thought-out comment, and there was some kind of a desire by sources, air quotes, to then walk away from the comment and say, don't highlight the comment to media houses. So it was not a planned comment to feed to their base and show Pakistan as dalal, etc. And I don't think it has picked up. I think it has been criticized. Nirupama Subramaniam wrote a very strong piece in the Tribune. There are others who have written about it. So people have been pretty angry, and people have said, you can't talk like this. This has got nothing to do with it. It didn't show India in a good light. I think Vivek Karju wrote about it. Others have written about it. So a lot of people have written about it. And I don't think it came out of a desire to pander to the base. We of course, at times, we give a lot of wisdom to these people. They are also human beings. They are also equally stupid, and they may have their nasty side, and that nasty side comes out in various ways. The equivalent, I'll say, just to take another 30 seconds, is to look at Trump. So, in the first few years, everybody would try and tell me a strategic theory about Trump, that Trump is doing this because he has this big plan and scheme. By now, we know he has no plan. He doesn't know what is the next sentence he's speaking. There is no plan. There is no great strategic thought going on. There is no great this thing. So we should also not look at everything that that the Hindutva ideologues and the Hindutva supporters and the government of the day does, and think that they are like very clever and planning and doing everything. They are as stupid as anyone else, perhaps even more stupid, as some of these memes and videos and clips and other things have shown.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase that says you should not attribute to malice that which you can explain through incompetence. Which actually, I'm really glad you brought up this question, Aditya, because I looked into Jaishankar a little bit, and he's been very pro the US for the last 20 years, pretty much. Like you can see that even in his past work. He has a book, and in that he talks about his specific approach to foreign policy, which is he uses Mahabharat themes, which is very on brand for for our current
So there
times.
are two. So there are two books. Richa, there are two books that he wrote. This is the second one you're talking about.
Yeah, this is the second
So,
one. So there's a chapter, he calls it Krishna's Choice. He says that Krishna encourages Arjun that the duty of the warrior is to fight for righteousness and fulfill the action that is just instead of being deterred by consequences, which after all is in the domain of the divine. He basically says the best known dilemmas of the Mahabharata relate to a determination to implement key policies without being discouraged by the collateral consequences of the action. He often portrays past Indian diplomacy as soft diplomacy without trying to make this a leading question. That's not, it doesn't look like that's what's happening. What are your thoughts on what he says and
so
what is
one
his
of one
policy?
of the thoughts, and I'll say, I'll go back to Gandhi, and I'll say, in the Gandhi was very clear that the part of Mahabharata which should be read is the Shanti Parv, where Bhishma and others are then reflecting at the end of the war. So on Mahabharata, the one thing which I think I did mention in the PCCI podcast, which I did with you guys many months back or whatever, many weeks back, Andhayog, I think, is the best commentary on Mahabharata. Andhayog is the small play that Dharmveer Bharti wrote at the age of 2025. It starts at the end of Mahabharata when the war is over. And I think it is what the havoc caused by war, that is what more important to be understood. Going back to Gandhi, Gandhi always spoke about Shanti Parva as being the most important. And he spoke about Gita as being a metaphor for the fight between the good and evil that lies within us. And that is what it was about. So if you're talking about I don't remember this quote, but if Jaishankar is talking about, what was exactly that you said, that to restore the social order, what was the term?
So he says that determination of to implement key policies without being discouraged by collateral consequences of the action.
So
So he
just
doesn't
before
want to be
that,
discouraged.
just before that, what did Krishna tell Arjuna?
So the duty of the warrior is to fight for righteousness and fulfill the
Yeah. So
action that is just.
yeah. So stop here. Righteousness, as defined in by this thing, is the establishment of the caste order.
Mhm.
So firstly, I don't know where we should go with it. Also, there is a lot of historical work on this to show that Gita was a later insertion, much later insertion into the Mahabharata. It was not the original insertion. But fair enough, Gita is a famous work, and it is now part of the folklore. It is now part of our beliefs. But I'm sure that you can justify anything that way by quoting
The
from
thing
the
is,
Maha- Mahabharata or Ramayana. It makes no sense. It has very little relevance or what I would say is we should judge them by their actions, not by what they say. I look at what they do and not what they say, and what they do has been a complete failure. So they can quote Mahabharata, they can quote Ramayana, they can say that they are Lord Rama themselves, or they are whatever they are. But at the end of the day, we should judge them by their actions, not by what they say, because they are in power. They are not academics giving theoretical constructs. They are not some policy analysts writing policy papers. They are in power. They are making policy. They are making decisions. They are taking actions which determine the course of history, which determine the course which the country takes. And we will judge them by their actions, not by what they say. And when we look at their actions, we see that they have failed by their own words. And that's why they go back on their own words. Jaishankar himself, a couple of years back, was saying that there's nothing which is decided, nothing is decided in this world without first consulting Mr. Modi. He's on record saying this. So this is the kind of stuff that he has said. So how do I trust him on saying this? Should I not then invoke that? Or what he said about Europe when the Ukraine war began, when the Russian war on Ukraine began, the kind of humiliation he was trying to pile on Europe. And now they've all gone back to Europe, and because now Trump is humiliating them. So really, Jaishankar's words, I don't think Jaishankar's words we should take seriously. We should see what Jaishankar has done or not done, or what Modi or Doval have done or not done, then rather look at their words. On Gita, as I said, go back to Gandhi, go back to Dharmveer Bharti, go back to a lot of other commentary on Gita, and look at Gita very seriously. Uh, Gi- India does not have only one holy book. There are Vedas, there are Upanishads, and I say India, I mean Hinduism. There are a large number of other holy books that exist. To make Gita as some kind of as a special book, which is like like religions of of a single book, whether it is Jews, whether it is Muslims, whether it is Christians. India is not. Hindu is not. Hindu has many books, and we can pick whichever
And the
book.
same book has many variations, right? Like there are
Same book
many
has many
variations
variants.
of the
Yeah,
Ramayana.
and
For example, like
and
there is a famous author, Chitra Devakuruni, who has her own adaptation of the Ramayana, and she talks through her research of all of the different types of Ramayans that she has taken from and created her own version of it. And it's telling from Sita's point of view, which is such a fantastic book. Like I would definitely want to plug that,
there is
read it.
there is an there used to be a book, academic book taught in DU, which was removed, was about 1800 types of Ramayana or something. I can we can
Hmm.
look for the link and put it later on. But it was even that exists. But if you're looking at a modern treatment of Ramayana, I would still recommend Arshia Sattar's book. I'm forgetting the title. We can find it, but it is to talk about the many conflicting dharmas of Ramayana. So he says Ram is being a good son. Dharma of a son he is doing. But is he doing this dharma towards his people by leaving them and going away for 14 years? But is he doing the dharma towards his wife? Is he doing the dharma towards his son? Is there are many dharmas that an individual have. Why are we saying that there is only one dharma, that is to his father? His father says go, he goes. But what about dharma? What about his dharma as the king of the people? To govern the people well. What about his dharma to his wife? What about dharma to his mother? So there are as a son to his mother. So there are many conflicting dharmas within the Ramayana. It's not as simple as that Ram is the epitome of everything that is dharma. And that book is actually a fantastic read. That is the first time I understood how to actually have a critical lens even at Ramayana and try and understand it. It's a very thoughtful book. It came out maybe 7, 8, 10 years back, within the last few years. Arshia Sattar's book. I said not a thick book, must be 200 odd pages. I thought that was again a great understanding. Also, I think there is a much earlier in the 50s and 60s. I think Maithili Sharan Gupta wrote a
Yes.
Mahakavya on
Urmila.
from Urmila's point of
Yeah.
view, which is Lakshman's wife. Now, why is Lakshman's wife suffering, man? What about Lakshman is being a great brother? His dharma is to be with his brother. What about your dharma as a husband? Why,
Yes.
why, what about a dharma as a husband? So, these are all questions which we can debate till cows come home, rather than just having a very unitary answer to these questions.
That's fair. I actually think there's another book. So Thucydides writes about the history of the Peloponnesian War, right? So that's his famous book where he documents the history. And there is a point at which, all of the emissaries from all of the different Greek nations are meeting, and the Athenians actually go and say, and they make a justification, and they're saying, men are more angered by injustice than enforcement. So they see one as an advantage taken by an equal, which is injustice, and the other as compulsion of a superior, right? So they think like if you can bully all of our neighboring states, that is fine. That we cannot tolerate being bullied by them. But if it's like a superior power like China or the US, then they're perfectly fine about seeing them take advantage of them because they are just considered like larger, much more powerful entities. And like in this environment, for them to then accept that Pakistan is a broker for peace, like that becomes like doubly painful for for the political agenda that these people are following and their sort of their motto essentially.
Yeah, I think broker for peace is a very polite way of putting it. I think more Jaishankar probably meant more as pimp, not as broker. I think
Mm,
broker, to if somebody is brokering for peace or mediating from peace, it's a laudatory thing. You would say it's a great thing to do. Everybody, the world needs peace. So what if
mm.
Pakistan is doing it? But I think what he meant was in a more derogatory manner. What he meant
Okay.
was in a manner of humiliating that this is nothing. But Pakistan, surprisingly, even in 1971, it is the one which had Kissinger go that secret trip that he traveled to Pakistan, and then he said he's unwell, he's going to Murray, and then he flies to China, meets Mao, and in 1971, and the big breakthrough, in which allows the diplomatic ties between eventually diplomatic Nixon to visit China, and then diplomatic ties to be established between United States and China, was all done by Pakistan. So Pakistan has a precedent in a certain sense in 1971 of achieving major breakthroughs by acting as an interlocutor. Not see Pakistan is not a great country. It may have gotten lucky in this aspect. It may be able to do this. That Pakistan's own track record of treating its religious minorities, treating its ethnic minorities, doing what it is doing to women, doing what it is doing to religious minorities is pathetic. What it is doing in Balochistan, what it is doing in the tribal areas, what it is doing elsewhere is not something we should aspire for or we should want to be. My whole problem has been that I don't want India to be a Hindu Pakistan. India and Pakistan chose two very different trajectories in 1947. India chose a trajectory to be a plural, secular, democratic republic. Pakistan chose to be a country or homeland for the Muslims of South Asia, and then eventually becoming an Islamic republic within a few years, because the boundary lines were very, very thin between what they were doing and what they were not doing. India did not choose that path. And Pakistan is actually the kind of warning that Indians should look at. That if you go down the path of an ethno-nationalistic route, a majoritarian route, this is the destination that you will eventually go down on. It's a warning for Indians. And so we should be very careful while giving credit to Pakistan for doing whatever dalali or whatever brokership that it is doing, or whatever pimpery it is doing currently. We have to be cognizant of that Pakistan is not what we want India to be, and we are all working towards this, fighting for that. That we don't want. We don't want to go down that path. As far as the power hierarchy is concerned, of course there is a power hierarchy even in today's world. There are three great powers, the US, China, and Russia to an extent, and we are dealing with those interplay of those three great powers, and within that we try and carve out a space for ourselves. Is India a power in South Asia itself? No. India has actually lost its power and influence within South Asia itself. What you saw in Bangladesh, what you saw in Nepal, what you saw in Sri Lanka, what you saw in Maldives, it is pretty clear that India doesn't wield the kind of influence that it used to wield in South Asia. A lot of people will try and blame it on China and say, oh, China has become more powerful, that's why. So I don't think that's the only reason. The other reason is, and this is something I've always believed, that Hindutva ideology, which moves from a Hindu Rashtra to Akhand Bharat, is structurally incompatible with a friendly South Asia. You can't have a South Asia which is friendly to you if you're going to talk about Akhand Bharat. So Hindutva ideology cannot have a nice, friendly South Asia which will stand behind you. And the third thing I'll say on this is that India's strategy of last 12 years, or Mr. Modi's strategy of last 12 years, or at least last 10 years, has been to completely diplomatically isolate Pakistan, by courting the United States, by working with Saudi Arabia, try to even work with China. But that clearly, by now we can see that strategy, that policy, that motive has failed. That has not worked. Pakistan is not isolated anymore. It is in fact friends with more countries than India can claim to be friends with. India can claim to be friends with. That it is able to do it despite having put Imran Khan behind bars, despite having the military playing an oversized role, despite having no form of democracy, despite having all these internal troubles, despite fighting with Afghanistan. Kind of saddens me that we reached a state where India is completely on the margins, and a country like Pakistan is actually able to do this. It's quite a sad. It's quite a sad commentary.
So I think I brought this up. We have a group chat, and I said, considering like Munir literally just insulted the Shias just before, um, just before being asked to be a mediator. And taking advantage of the fact that they have the second largest Shia population, it means that there was probably scope for someone else to be a negotiator here, not Pakistan.
Yeah, Richa, not mediator. We should use the word interlocutor. I don't think Pakistan has the kind of credit or the heft where you can actually mediate. In mediation, you have to give guarantees. You have to take guarantees. You say, if Iran doesn't this, I am guaranteed that Iran will do this. What I think they are doing it, they are acting more as messengers and interlocutors. They're just passing messages from one side to the other, and the two sides trust them to pass the messages in the right manner and convey those messages and act as an honest interlocutor. They are not mediators. By mediation is a very different thing. In mediation, you take guarantees on behalf of others. You say, you push the two sides to come to some kind of this thing. I don't think
Okay.
Pakistan has that kind of diplomatic capacity or that kind of heft to be able to mediate between Iran and the United States. It can act as an interlocutor. It can act as a messenger, honest messenger and honest interlocutor. I think that's what it is being
So not even in combination with Turkey and Egypt, or do you think like they are still all interlocutors?
I think Pakistan. I'm not too sure about Turkey and Egypt because Saudis are also part of that four
Hmm.
nation thing. I think more to do with China. I think everybody understands that Iran would probably listen to Beijing, and has close ties with Beijing. I think it is more and that's why you saw the moment those four-country meeting got over in Islamabad. Ishaq Dar, Pakistan's foreign minister and deputy prime minister, flew down immediately to meet Wang Yi and brief Wang Yi, and then Wang Yi gave the two foreign ministers issued a 5-point statement, a peace plan or whatever. So I think more than what Turkey can achieve, more than what Egypt can achieve, it is what China can achieve. So the Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia thing is, since its inception, Pakistan has seen itself, always envisioned itself as a leader of the Islamic world. It is the only Muslim country or Islamic country with a nuclear bomb. So this, in that sense, there are multiple angles at play here. While it is also trying to do
Hmm.
this, it is also trying to achieve its historical dream of being this big leader of the Islamic world, of the Muslim countries. So there are many things at play, and that is what should make India extremely uncomfortable if Pakistan is able to achieve any of those aims by these moves. I have something in the foreign policy which appeared just before we went to record this podcast. So probably you can link it to that in your show notes, a piece in foreign policy which I wrote about this.
Okay. Aditya, did you have any question before we start wrapping up?
I have a one tangent on this because my s- my research specialization on this podcast is to sieve through a lot of the right wing podcasts and space, like people who are kinder to this government and so on. So and geopolitics and foreign policy is the area of specialization for a lot of these quacks. So in that space, like I would say, like for a serious foreign policy expert like you, someone who deals with this on a daily basis, this must be, you are in direct competition with these quacks. So how is it that, like, so do you think about like how you communicate a lot of this with the larger audience in general on a daily basis, or like how to get across, say, something which would often have a lot of complexity to
So,
the masses, like in such a crowded space? Yeah.
no, I agree with you, Aditya. I don't follow their work. I don't know
Mm.
who the people you are listening to with this very fancy headset that you have in your head. Very nice looking, very elegant looking headset that you have. I'm like looking at the headset and I'm saying, man, this is what I should also have. This looks so nice. But to be
Yes.
more seriously, I really haven't given it any thought, and it doesn't bother me. Mostly, I write when I think. Uh, I would want to believe that I write when I think an issue is of importance, and either it is being misrepresented and I need to clarify in some way. If it has larger international resonance, I will publish in foreign policy, foreign affairs, Financial Times, or depending on whatever publication I think would at that time either wanting me to write, or I may be pitching to them. For a lot of other work, Caravan is my primary home. Caravan, as you know, is a subscription-based publication. So I don't think we are reaching the kind of numbers that probably a lot of other people are reaching. I also have a column in Telegraph, which is not behind a paywall. Calcutta Telegraph. I also write something for the Morning Context, which is again behind a paywall. So a lot of this stuff is. I don't think I can compete with quacks. I don't think the best doctors in India, whether they work at AIMS or whether they work at whatever hospital that they are at Medanta or wherever, can compete with quacks. Quacks have a specialty. It is like, asking
Because
scientists to compete with these religious cult leaders, man. Like, you can't. There's no. It's an unfair battle. They have all the advantages. I don't have those kind of those kind of. But I really don't. Do I think about it? No. But I do in my own way. I do try and articulate and put out stuff and hope that people pick up those arguments, pick up those ideas, whether on social media, whether on podcasts like yours or elsewhere. That's what, but not really actively trying to counter anything or trying to think of that on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. No idea at all what's going on. Don't follow them. There's just too much on my plate to follow that. And this, how we were able to record this
yeah,
podcast. It's just too much to do to actually follow a lot of that kind of work.
well, I
So
think one thing that we saw, like, and just one last
go
addendum,
ahead.
like, so during this whole Operation Sindoor thing, so something that strikes you is like even when someone is speaking about foreign policy in India or like say reporting in a warlike situation, a lot of this comes with a lot of tightrope walking, especially when it is to do with the army. So last year it became really difficult for someone to say something as cliched or as basic as, say, calling for de-escalation, for example. So that came with its own pushback from everywhere. Like even voices you would conventionally consider as left liberal or like at least left of center, like even from those spaces you would get a pushback. So how do you deal with this idea, especially while reporting about, say, the armed forces, for example?
So I try and be as honest as possible, and during the May 2025 conflict or this thing, I've always believed that nuclear weapon states should not engage in military conflict with each other, and this is the argument which I gave even in 2025. And I'm sounding too indulgent now, and I think we can move on to next question. But the only way to deal with it is to be honest and direct, and the fact that I've reported on India-China border crisis, I report on India-Pakistan. You try and be as honest, and you try and stick to the broad ideas of peace, harmony. Uh, you know, uh, there is no substitute for peace, and there is no substitute for the idea that nuclear weapon states don't go to war with each other. I don't want nuclear weapon states to be going to war, to be going to war with each other. There are ways, there are other options which should be exercised first and finished before going to war. Calling for peace is not a sign for weakness. Calling for de-escalation is not a sign for weakness. Actually, it is a sign of strength. It is a sign of, and that is the way we need to operate. I also know the kind of people you're talking about in 2025 because I was in India at that point in time between semesters, and some of those people surprised me. But I think that's true for the first 24 to 30 hours. But after
Yeah.
that, I think the tide turned, and a lot of us put out stuff which clearly the government of the day did not like or say, and particularly while the independent media in India, whether it is people like Karan or Wire or Caravan, or international media, whether it was Deutsche Welle or New Yorker or Financial Times or whatever, foreign affairs, we were able to get a lot of stuff going where we were able to rationally talk and not just recycle government's talking points of bombing everyone to the Stone Age or something, whatever that might be the case. So I think, yeah, I know what you say. And after the first few days, I think there was a significant stream of voices within the Indian media ecosystem, commentary ecosystem, talking, writing ecosystem, uh, which uh, which was able to have a sane point of view at that point in time. It's a tough one. But you try and do to the best of your ability, where and you try and do the best of your ability without being dishonest in any manner. And I think, particularly writing the story like the one on General Narawane's memoirs, you have to be very clear that there are things which will make people uncomfortable. There are things which will make people in my former organization, the army, uncomfortable. But then this is my duty as a journalist to do, and this is what I should do. It is like the many conflicting dharmas of Ram, many conflicting dharmas of writing these stories that you choose one dharma and you pursue that dharma.
Okay. Yeah. So with that note, I know we have to be cognizant of the time. So I would like to wrap up, even though I have like 17 more questions for you, Sushant. We don't want to keep you hungry. And on
Also, Richa, that would become a podcast like those 6 hour long podcasts people do. Yeah, who is going to listen to us? That is too indulgent on our behalf, on our part to
That's
imagine
true.
that people want to listen to us for 6 hours. Man, this is already too long. People will say, "भाई इतनी लफाजी क्यों कर रहे हैं लोग? What is so big? What is the big
You
deal?"
won't be surprised. So in last week's podcast, we reviewed one that went on for 2.5 hours, and a lot of people had watched it. So they're more common than you think. But
People
it
should
has
find better
been.
things. People should find better things to do than listen to people like
People are
us.
learning history from these podcasts. So
Unfortunately for history and for historians and for themselves. Anyway, no. Yeah, sorry.
Anyway, so we are extremely grateful for having you on, Sushant. It has been a pleasure, and thank you. We hope you can come back again. And if you want to plug anything that you've written lately, that would be a great way to end.
Thank you so much, Richa. Thank you so much, Aditya. Thank you so much to all the other members of the team who are not here, MV and others. It has been lovely. I had to find time to come here, but I really enjoyed talking to you. I really like talking to you, and the way that we could chat in a very friendly manner, on a holiday afternoon it's something I found something I really enjoy and cherish. As for the plugs, I made enough plugs within the within the podcast itself. Nothing what I have written or done, but I would say, because a large number of people who would be here would be interested in India, I would say do support independent media in India. It is a time where independent media needs all your support. Speak up for the right things, do the right things, and just believe that. That things can change, things will change if we. So what is that line? The great MLK line: the arc of the arc of justice, the arc of
The arc
history
of history.
bends towards justice. But that's not the point. The point is what Obama added to it. What Obama added, I think Obama was quoting someone. The arc of history bends towards justice, but
MLK.
each one of us has to put a shoulder to it.
Yes.
I think I'll end it on that note. Thank you so much, Richa.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Aditya.
Thank you.
thanks.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
8 नवंबर 2016 की रात्रि को 12 बजे से
चीफ मिनिस्टर के लिए मेरा एक ही संदेश है कि वो राजधर्म का पालन करें।
हार्डवेयर वालों की सोच क्या होती है, हार्ड वर्क वालों की सोच क्या होती है।
अरे ये ना पंजाब की खुशबू।